A wife needs to feel love. A husband needs to feel respected. Do you know what I mean? We have a principle or a mutual agreement that Charlene will never. Are you experiencing emotional distance and increased conflict in your relationship?
Or perhaps your sex life isn't where it used to be and the drive to perform is causing anxiety.
In this two-part episode on the midlife crisis, we take a look at how it affects your marriage, relationship, and sex life,
Giving you practical advice on how to prioritize your relationship, sex life, and intimacy.
Stay to the end to learn about some strategies that can be a game changer in the bedroom. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Rewrite Your Story, the podcast where change begins with you.
We're your hosts, Stephen and Sharlene.
As professional coaches and mentors trained in various modalities, we have helped hundreds of people
Bridge the gap between the person they are
and the person they want to be.
We bring you conversations with real people who have overcome real setbacks.
You will walk away with practical steps to find more clarity, alignment, and success in any area you want to improve.
So join us and discover how you have the power to overcome, to change, and to rewrite your story.
So pick up the pen. Your new chapter starts now.
Well, Charlene, today we are on episode 2 of Midlife Crisis.
Absolutely. And in our previous episode, we explored what a midlife crisis is, what leads to it, the signs to watch for, and how it affects men and women differently. Today in the second part of our series, we want to actually focus on how a midlife crisis can impact marriages, ways to navigate this challenging time together, and actually steps to avoid or mitigate its effects.
And midlife crisis is experienced individually, but its impacts do ripple effect into a person's marriage. And so we really want to have a look at the impact of a marriage it has on a marriage, but also what are some ways you can navigate that as well. So, Charlene, how does a midlife crisis affect a marriage?
Wow. A midlife crisis can actually significantly strain marriages, creating tension, conflict, and emotional disconnect. Some key effects actually include emotional distance, increased conflict, infidelity, changes in priorities, and potential for divorce.
So should we have a look at a few of these and see how they actually affect? So one of them is the emotional distance which you manage. And I think that's when one partner may become emotionally distant or preoccupied with their own struggles and disconnect from the relationship. So there is that isolation as such that can occur, and also the withdrawing. And though sometimes that is normal, and we explored that last episode, part 1, that men usually do retreat in times of distress and women like to speak about it. But in a midlife crisis, you tend to see both retreating.
Yeah, and I often think that someone retreating can often come down to them having a misconception about the other person, like in the marriage, thinking that they might not understand what they're going through, and they have this false belief that they won't understand, so I better not say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And increased conflict as a result of this. So the stress and anxiety, and we spoke about why midlife crisis last week. Last episode, we spoke about, there's the change of life, there's a change of goals, there are hormonal imbalances going ahead and all that.
I guess, sometimes when it comes to infidelity, a lot of it will probably come from the person going through this midlife crisis, thinking that, again, coming back to feeling that they're not going to be understood and therefore not opening up. So they're going to seek the understanding outside to anyone who's going to show that attention or look like they're going to understand.
Yeah, and usually when affairs occur during a midlife crisis, it can actually be 2 things. It can be, one, that you're looking for that affirmation or that, to boost your confidence outside of the marriage. Or 2, it could just be the thrill, because you miss that excitement in life. Yeah. So it actually is 2 ways. And one can be an actual physical affair, but also there can be that emotional side of infidelity as well. Then there's the changes in priorities. So a partner in crisis may prioritize their own exploration of careers, leaving the relationships, the feeling of neglect. So they're trying to piece this all together, what is actually going in. And so their priorities shift and the us becomes about the me.
That's right.
And
there's no longer that team atmosphere. So it's like, oh, okay, now it's just about me trying to navigate how I'm feeling, what's going on with me. Like, I don't understand what's going on for myself. How can I expect someone else to understand it? And then they start to try and find out their things on their own rather than trying to work as a team to try and get this sorted.
And we see that it can lead to a divorce or separation. And that's due to the strain of the midlife crisis, which can lead to the divorce if the issues aren't, one, recognized and addressed. Like really looking at what are the issues here? Why am I feeling this way? Or why is my partner feeling this way? How can I support them? So I think understanding these effects is really crucial in navigating a midlife crisis within a marriage. And both partners need to communicate openly and seek understanding of each other's needs during this time. Because usually when the other person is retreating due to a midlife crisis, human nature is we always make it about us.
Yeah. And it comes down to not necessarily expecting the other person to understand you, but communication is still key. Regardless of whether they are going to understand what you're going through, they still need to know what is happening. You know what I mean? Like, you might not know, but let them know that there's something going on. You've got an internal turmoil, and seek counseling. You seek counseling together. Seek some kind of therapy that you can both go to and get a grounded and objectional point of view.
I think in my experience, and we'll talk about this a bit later, marriage counseling both partners need to be open.
That's right.
Because and I've seen this in the past where people go to marriage counseling to try to show up the other person and how they're so wrong in their behavior or what they're feeling, rather than exploring what could actually work for both of them, or how can they both be a cause of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, in the same situation, I mean, if you've got a really good therapist, that can also turn around, and that person that's just going there just to show the other person up with great questions, they're going to be able to be turned around and like give the other person a chance to actually talk as well. So hopefully you can find someone who's a good marriage therapist out there.
I think if we look at the context of the issues that present themselves, like all those issues, and marriage counseling and being open to that, I think Ephesians 4:2-3 really hits the nail on the head. And it says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love, and make every effort to keep unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And I think, humble and gentle and patient. Yeah, like that, and bearing with one another in love. And, it goes down to, if we've been redeemed, is actually during this time seeing that person through the cross, not through their actions. And that is easier said than done sometimes.
That doesn't mean it's impossible.
That doesn't mean it's impossible. So I think one of the keys in this area is really keep the lines of communication open, to prevent the emotional distance with each other. And, as you said, seek counseling together.
The Bible verse from 1 Peter 4:3 says that above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. And that's not saying you're covering over someone's sins. It means it actually covers, it actually helps you to stop sinning in those other areas. Because if you love someone, you're not going to do something bad to them. If you truly love someone, you're not going to do sin against them or do anything that will harm them or harm the relationship.
And I think too, it's not about retribution.
Yes.
It's about restoration in the marriage.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when people go through midlife crisis, again, it's going back to you're doing this to me or to us. And rather than restoration, we take the retribution avenue.
That's right.
They both start with R's, but they're totally different. And I think, yeah. So let's look at the next theme is how navigating a midlife crisis in marriage. So how can we do that? And I think couples can navigate the challenge of a midlife crisis through a couple of really healthy strategies. And the first one is communication.
Yeah. And open communication. Communication is one thing, but having an open communication where you're actually genuinely interested to hear what the other person has to say, rather than just trying to listen to have your chance to say something.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be honest communication, and that's essential for understanding each other's feelings.
Yeah.
And it's the way we say it as well, like if I come to you and say, well, this is how you make me feel. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. Those
Yeah.
walls are straight up. But if I come to you and say, hey, I just need to get something off my chest, and, I could totally be wrong. And this is totally my interpretation of what's happening. This is how I'm feeling, da, 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 da. It's basically saying, this is what I'm feeling. This is the actions that have made me feel this way. Is this what you meant?
Yeah. So rather than blaming someone, you're using I statements, right?
Yeah.
Than you statements.
Absolutely. The other one is support and understanding. Like if your partner is going through what you think is a midlife crisis, but if you're not sure of what a midlife crisis, then we ask, go back and listen to part 1, because it really identifies what the signs of a midlife crisis. But offering empathy, support rather than judgment can also help the partner through their crisis. And again, if it is the lack of validation, if it is the lack of validation, or it's the lack of attention, then, rather than judging them and saying, what do you mean? I do this and this for you, and, I clean, I cook, and blah, 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 blah. Just say something like, wow, I didn't realize you were feeling that way. Help me to help you.
How can I support you through?
Yeah, how can I support you? Help me to understand what you need during this time, and help me be able to provide that for you.
Yeah.
Rather than playing a guessing game, because, it's just going to end up in disaster.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
like a key component to this is, as we mentioned before, seeking counseling together. Marriage counseling can actually strengthen the relationship by addressing underlying issues and improving communication, because you have someone else there to help with the questions, directing the questions in a way that will allow both of you to express what you're feeling, what's going on in the relationship, and how to support each other through this.
And my advice is, I don't know, maybe you can explain this more, but my advice, and this is something that I've learnt through the years, is never ask people that are close to you for advice, for marriage counseling, because the advice can be biased rather than unbiased. And then it just causes conflict within the friendship, or conflict within the relationship. Well, you're siding with them, and you're siding with them. And I think it just leads to more heartache and more broken relationships. So my advice is, if you want to seek someone, like, it doesn't have to be a trained counselor, but obviously they have the tools, or a marriage coach or something like that. They have the tools, they have the experience. Someone that is not biased to the relationship.
That's right.
What's your opinion on that?
I think it's so important as well. I mean, like, even though you might go to like a trained therapist, you want to make sure that person doesn't have any of their own agendas. Like, if they're pro female or pro male, and they're just like tend to take sides, in one way or the other. If you need to have someone who's going to be grounded, to be able to have an objective view, and to be able to help both of you, not just one side.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. So really interview the counselor first, interview the life coach. Sometimes we make a phone call and we get the whole sales spill, rather than saying, are you a actual fit for me? And I think that's really important. The other thing is, find ways to rekindle the relationship. Is it spending time together, enjoying activities together that can rebuild connection and intimacy? For instance, we once a year do our vision weekend, where we look at, what does this year look like? What does, and we just spend time working on the relationship, realigning our values, it could be just,
drinking as well together. Drinking together. Getting an idea, like, what would you like to achieve? What things you'd like to do together?
It could be going to the movies.
Yeah.
It could be going to the theaters. It could be going for a dinner out together, date nights, so do things that actually invest in and rekindle the intimacy between the couple. And when we say intimacy, we're not talking about sex. We're actually talking about that emotional intimacy, which is
open, honest, and vulnerable communication with each other. And be patient. Be patient. Recognizing that a midlife crisis is often temporary can help partners remain patient and supportive during difficult times. Understanding that we're all human, right?
Yeah.
We're all prone to our idiosyncrasies and our things that make us different.
Yeah, it just reminds me, last week I was talking to someone, right? And you just reminded me, and basically we were just smashing the theory of work-life balance in a 24-hour period, because I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions. I was going to use a much brighter word. It's one of the biggest misconceptions. And I think you need to look at work-life balance as seasons. Seasons of work, seasons of relaxation. Don't look at it. And I think the whole, 8 hours working, 4 hours family, 2 hours exercise, this can actually cause anxiety.
Yeah.
But if we look at it, there's going to be times where you're going to be out of balance because you're doing your side hustle, you're doing what you love best. And that's the same with emotions sometimes, and also midlife crisis. It's seasonal. Things are seasonal, and the seasons of life do not define us. They build us, and they build our character.
Yep, so true. By working together as couples, you can not only survive a midlife crisis, but actually emerge from it stronger and more connected. And that would be really awesome, right? Just to be able to take something that could just completely destroy the marriage and turn it around and make it more stronger, with more connection in there.
Yeah. And I think what we need to do during this time is remember that love is the bond that holds a relationship together. Even through the challenges of a midlife crisis, remember the love, remember the vision, remember the purpose, remember that why you are together in the first place, and cultivate that, cultivate the love. And I think, in Colossians 3:14, it says, and overall, these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And I think, it's so important to invest in the love and remind and learning about, your partner's love language during these times, learning about what's actually going to make them feel valid. And, we've done a whole episode on living the love languages, and we interviewed a guest on that. And, figuring out what is their love language and really investing time in that is so important.
We're not talking about, the romantic, butterflies in your stomach kind of love. And great if it's there, great if you've had that. Sometimes it's good to come back to, why did I have those feelings in the first place?
Yeah.
What was it that attracted me to this person in the first place? And then take that and make that a commitment to love that person.
So I think the key takeaways is focus on empathy.
Yeah.
Approach your struggles, approach your partner's struggle with empathy, with understanding, and also invest in the relationship.
Yeah, make it intentional. It's about making time for shared activities that strengthen your bond, whether it's a project, whether it's a hobby, whether it's something that you want to do together. Find something that makes you both tick when you think about it.
You know what? I think you used a key word, intentional. I think a lot of activities that couples do, especially, when they've been married for quite a few years. Like you look at us, we've been married for 24 years now. We're 25 next year.
Yeah.
And, intentionality is more important than accidentality, that's a word, because happen by chance, because no relationship will ever work by chance.
That's right.
There has to be an intentional commitment.
It's not just good luck. It's actual intentional commitments, intentional decisions and choices that you act on daily. It's like you said before, the decision is made once and acted on daily.
Yeah.
So, in Romans 12:10 says that be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves.
And I think that's key, right?
Yeah.
I think the key is, well, first of all, you cannot love someone if you don't have self-love, okay? And, if you don't have self-love, then there needs to be a healing in that process to see what are the actual underneath causes of this, right? And then from the love that I have, then I honor you and put you above my needs. And what I say, and a lot of people misinterpret that and actually neglect themselves to serve others.
Yeah.
And you can only serve from a full cup. So make sure your cup is full so that you can pour out.
Yeah.
And so my role as a husband is one, to fill my cup so that I can fill your cup. But then your role is, as your cup is being filled, to fill my cup. So it's a constant renewal and pouring.
That's right.
And it's like similar to the episode we did a couple of weeks ago about intentional living and giving. It's that intentional filling and pouring, see it as a river flowing.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned just before about how people quite often misunderstand that. And it actually, Jesus himself said that, love one another, love your neighbor as you love yourself. That very key word, as you love yourself, it means it was intended for us to love ourselves. It's just a given that we're like people usually supposed to have the self-love for themselves, right? That's why we need to be able to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. But people forget that part, right? And they think, oh, just love your neighbor and forget about, don't worry about yourself. But it's intentional. We're supposed to already have that love. How can we love someone if we don't have the love for ourselves?
Absolutely. So, Sharlene, how does a midlife crisis actually affect a couple's sex life?
Okay, that's a really good topic. Often life crisis can impact on a couple's sex life, which can be affected in several ways. And one of those is decreased libido. It can really take a, I was going to use a word like take a pounding, like on stress, anxiety, and emotional turmoil, which can lead to decreased interest in sex. Hormonal changes, particularly in women, such as menopause, can actually further reduce sexual desire. So they're like, oh no, not really into it.
So, and that affects men as well, because men are going through hormonal changes in their 40s as well. There's decrease in testosterone production. So it can be but stress and anxiety, and also trying to figure this stuff out in your head can also, consume a lot of energy. So therefore your libido is decreased as well. Then there's the emotional disconnect. So the emotional distance created by the midlife crisis may lead to the reduced intimacy or making physical affection feel strained, forced, like I'm not really there emotionally, I'm not really there in my head. Yep.
Then there's body image issues. How many people have that, right? Both men and women may struggle with body image issues during midlife crisis. Feeling less attractive or self-conscious about aging, which can reduce the sexual confidence, or they'll look for it outside because they want to make themselves feel, like they used to before. But in reality, it's not going to.
Yeah. And again, another one is, now we're not saying in all cases of midlife crisis, people are going to be unfaithful, but in some cases, individuals may seek the validation or excitement outside the marriage, leading to infidelity, which can deeply impact the couple's sexual connection. And infidelity, again, could be either physical or emotional as well.
There's changes in sexual preferences. In a midlife crisis, it may prompt one partner to explore new sexual interests or fantasies, which can either invigorate the life if communicated openly, or cause discomfort and tension if there's a mismatch in these desires, right?
Yeah, and I think too, we'll look at how we can address these, but I think too, there's nothing wrong with exploring each other's sex life, like exploring your sex life and what you like and what your partner likes and what they don't like and their boundaries and things like that. But it needs to be communicated, not assumed.
That's right. And also, it doesn't mean just because you're talking about these things that you're necessarily going to go and do it tomorrow or, like do it the next day or whatever. It just means that it allows that person to express who they are, like what's happening on the inside, and to be able to look at it from a different angle. They might have a new perspective when they're able to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think what we need to do is actually address these issues openly, compassionately, to maintain a healthy sex life during a midlife crisis. So open communication and mutual understanding can really help couples navigate these challenges or the changes together. Like there are going to be hormonal changes, there are going to be physical changes, and there are going to be changes to likes and dislikes. That's just part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. In 1 Corinthians 7:3, it says, the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise a wife to her husband. So it's not just one way, it's both of them coming together and submitting to each other, submitting to that marriage.
Yeah, and in this context, yes, it's talking about a healthy and fulfilling marital relationship, but it's also talking about the sexual aspect of the relationship as well. So I think some takeaways is communicate openly. Talk about your sexual needs, concerns, and the desires with your partner. I think we spend so much time talking about it really fascinates me if you look at the Christian perspective, right? There are so many books on, communication, marriage, relationship, premarital sex, things like that. There's hardly anything on how to have a good sex life as a couple. Do you know what I mean? Like there's hardly anything, it's really hard to find. And so I think, be explorative. And we're going to talk more about this in a moment, but rebuild the emotional intimacy by strengthening your emotional connection can improve that physical intimacy as well. And, I think the verse that says, let the husband render to his wife the affection due to her, and likewise it's also the wife to her husband. Again, it's talking about the emotional intimacy as well as the physical intimacy. And I think a lot of times we forget that, sex actually doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts
in the kitchen.
And I'm sure there's a book about that. There's, isn't it? Yeah. So it's that emotional connection as well. It's that emotional
I guess it comes
building.
down to learning the other person's love language, right? And that's where it starts.
Yeah. So let's look at what couples can do to actually address the sexual issues during a midlife crisis. And I think, first of all, couples need to invest in their sex life. Now, when I say invest in their sex life, I don't mean just the physical act, okay? Yeah. I mean, have open communication, talk about it, learn what does your partner like.
Yeah. Don't expect the other person to read your mind.
Yeah, learn about your partner's needs, learn about, and, usually the best sex is when you put the other person first.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And really explore what they like, really, experiment as well, So I think one of the first thing is open and honest communication, and I think before we talk about this, deal with any preconceived or hurt or past relationship expectations that you might have. These things can be dwelling up as you are getting, advanced in years, I guess. There could be things from your past that are creeping in. And so I think you really need to say, okay, what is it now that's actually affecting our sex life?
Yeah.
Okay. And stop the comparitis, like you're going through a midlife crisis here. Stop comparing, water the garden where you're at.
That's right. Watering someone else.
But learn to really invest time. And again, it's about the intentionality.
Yeah, right. So, open and honest communication really starts with, thinking outside of yourself and really trying to find out, okay, what does this other person need? What does my partner need in this relationship? And not expecting them to want what you want, but listening to what they really need. Like, is there something from their past that's affects them? Maybe perhaps having a safe word, you know what I mean? If they feel like they need to stop at a certain moment, if they're being triggered by something, and to stop for a moment, allow them to communicate what's happening, and then to look at other ways that you can explore the intimacy.
And it's also as you, are opening your communication with your partner and you're exploring what they want, share what you want.
That's right.
As well. So it's a two-way communication here.
Right. It's a dance, right?
Yeah, a dance.
We want to rebuild emotional intimacy during this time. So one of the important things is to focus on the emotional connection shared through activities and quality time together. This can actually enhance your physical intimacy rather than decrease it, right?
Yeah. And also seek counseling. Like there's couples counseling, there's therapy that may help you resolve some issues, but also improve your overall relationship, including your sex life.
That's right.
And I think the key is actually rediscover each other. Start exploring each other's sexual preferences, desires through new experiences can really reignite the passion and improve that intimacy. You know, don't be afraid to explore, you know, and if you're got some religiosity, you know, be open to challenge and question what you have believed. Is it really scriptural or is it people's opinion?
Yeah. We want to make sure, like, if you're going to bring, your faith into it, make sure it comes from the Word of God, not just other people's assumptions based on religious superstitions.
Because we've seen a lot of relationships damaged by beliefs around sex that have nothing. And if you're really questioning it, just go read the Song of Solomon. Just read the Song of Solomon. That'll blow out any religious belief around sex as well. Another key is actually focus on your own health and well-being. So prioritizing your physical health, exercise, diet, any stress reduction techniques, journaling. Journaling could, you can speak into this. Journaling could actually be a really good thing when it comes to this.
Yeah.
When it comes to improved sex life. Do you want to explain why?
Absolutely, because if you're noticing any changes, like as you come up, every time you journal something, like you're noticing subtle changes along the way. If you notice anything change, you can address that. Come back to it and think, okay, what do I need to address here? Because there's something I need to do, like deeper work with, or what is happening here? Like obviously something has changed through these journalings. Like sometimes we're not always aware of these changes because we're so caught up in like our everyday life or getting so busy with all the traps of life that we don't really pay full attention to things that change on a subtle basis. So having that journal can have a place for you to look at those subtle changes.
So it's actually prioritizing these things can actually have a positive effect on your impact on sexual function as well.
Right.
Yeah. Again, patience and compassion, understand that any changes in your sex life are actually a normal part of aging and allows for a compassionate and patient approach in navigating these sexual challenges.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then, researching maybe, how can I do this? Is there a supplement? Is there, something as simple as a lubricant that can actually help in the changes of the body changes of sexual intercourse?
One of the things that's important is that we want to address body image concerns as well. Supporting each other's self-confidence by openly discussing body image issues and offering reassurance can boost the sexual confidence. Quite often we have views of our own body that the other partner doesn't necessarily see. They're probably looking at you thinking, gosh, you're beautiful, gosh, you're gorgeous, right? And we're just assuming that they're thinking, oh, you're such an ugly ogre or something like that, right? Because that's how they feel about themselves. So stop projecting your own inner dialogue and body image issues on other people. It doesn't mean that just because you think a certain way about your body that someone else is feeling the same way about you.
Absolutely. And you know what? Let's face it, we age together. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think it affects everyone. Like I see you as, you're a very confident person. You're very, you're pretty secure in your own body image, right? But after, 18 cycles of IVF, I don't think you gained weight, but you did feel that you gained weight, and that affected your body image, I think you maybe gained 5 kilos, seriously. But that was enough to affect you. And it was like me saying, Charlene, do you know what I mean? Like, take a chill pill. Like, even if you gain 5 kilo, my leg still weighs more than you. But do you know what I mean? It was providing that assurance, and then, but it wasn't about, it's what you were uncomfortable in your own skin at that time. And so it's, if your partner does have body image issues, don't dismiss it.
That's right.
Because even though it was probably just 5 kilos, you felt uncomfortable because that was 5 kilos too much for you.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
You've always supported me in that way. Like, you've always been like very open with your compliments of me, which I've always like, appreciated, like not needed, but always appreciated. And I guess it's helped also to increase and like it's maintain that sort of sense of confidence too. But one of the things I know is that we can sometimes get into the trap of, especially guys can say like they want to please the wife, so they agree with her when she says, "Oh, I look fat," But you guys do not agree, okay? And you can sort of don't invalidate her, but say, "I can see you're experiencing, some, crisis of body image here, and just want to show you that I don't see that. But whatever you feel like you need to do, work towards something like changing or whatever it is you need to do, I'll support you."
Yeah. And I think during, like, because we're talking about sex and relationship, I think be open to, tools to really improve your sex life and your relationship. And, there's an app which we recommend. It's called Ultimate Intimacy. It's a Christian app, and it has great questions. It has great games that you can play as a couple. And it's really a great tool to really spark your sex life. Yeah.
And I think like I want to just quickly come back to the open communication. Never assume that your partner knows what you feel about them. If you're feeling like a great level of love and affection towards a person, don't just assume that they still know that. Because we all go through changes in our minds and our bodies as things change. We see things differently. Like we said, we have that body image, right? And sometimes if we're ashamed of that, we won't vocalize it. So if you're feeling a certain way and you want to express that, don't be shy to do that. Just come out and say it. Just let them know, how wonderful they are to you or how beautiful they are. Even if they turn you down and say, no, that's not true. Just keep persisting. Just keep persisting and letting them know.
One of when we've done, marriage counseling, marriage coaching, one of the scriptures we always refer to is Ephesians 5:33. And it says, however, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. And there's a really great book, and I forgot the author, and it's called Love and Respect. A wife needs to feel love. A husband needs to feel respected. Do you know what I mean? And so a simple thing is, like we have this rule not a rule, but it's maybe a principle or a mutual agreement that Charlene will never put me down in public or correct me in public or address me in public, because that will chip away at my respect or I would undermine me. However, I make sure that I show her love, or, just across the room, I might just give her a smile or a wink that she knows that, so it's these little subtleties that actually go a long way in a marriage as well.
We often take them for granted though, don't we? And that's not to say, like a guy's probably thinking, well, I'll respect her if she, I'll love her if she respects me more, right? Or and the wife will probably say, I'll respect him when he starts loving me more. But that's not what the word says. It's just saying love your wife as you love as yourself, and the wife to respect her husband. It doesn't say if. There's no if so, right?
No, there's no. It's not a
tit for tat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you do it either way, and I think that's what overcomes challenges. So I think be patient and compassionate, and understand that, changes in sexual desires and functions are actually normal as we age and require mutual support.
Explore together.
Yeah.
Explore each other.
Absolutely.
Explore together as well.
Try new activities, tools that may work, be open, but also in your openness, respect each other's boundaries, but can also realize in that the openness can actually bring excitement and closeness to the relationship. I think Matthew 6 says, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. So I really, even though a midlife crisis actually puts a lot of challenges, both personally and in the relationship, in, your communication, in the sex life, it's about having like you said, intentional, proactive approach. And knowing that either as an individual or as a couple, you can actually navigate and transition quite successfully and maintain that open communication. Seek, coaching or mentoring or counseling when needed, but also focus on the mutual support of each other, but also your own self-care during the time, which can really help as well.
That's right. Remember that like midlife crisis is actually a natural part of aging and self-reflection. So it doesn't have to signal the end of anything. It doesn't mean you had to go down that road of divorce or that everything's the end
It's
of
a new chapter,
the world.
right?
It's just a new chapter. So rather, like it can be the experience of a new beginning, something more fulfilling, like a new chapter in life, and understanding that its causes and effects. Understanding those causes and effects by taking positive steps, you can turn a midlife crisis into an opportunity for growth and deeper connection.
Just to close, I think Psalm 46:1 reminds us that God is our refuge and a strength, an ever-present help in trouble. And it's in those seasons. And remembering it's just a season. Don't define your life by seasons of your life, and that He can actually provide the peace and direction and actually bring healing to the relationship, bring healing to the sex life, bring restoration, not retribution.
Thank you for joining us on the Rewrite Your Story podcast.
We hope you found this episode enlightening.
For more information on the topics discussed, please visit our website at stephenandsharlene.com.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, share it with your friends, and follow us on social media at Stephen and Sharlene.
Until next time, stay informed and inspired.
This is Stephen and Sharlene signing off from the Rewrite Your Story podcast. Thank you and stay blessed.